was just arrested in Sanctuary City for massacring hundreds. President Trump made it quite clear that not every immigrant that enters our country is an upstanding human being that's merely seeking a better life. From day one of his candidacy, Trump pointed out that some bad people enter our country from time to time as well, and we as a nation really need to get a handle on that. Trump was portrayed as being insensitive to the plight of immigrants and as if he was a racist, but now the media's chickens are coming home to roost. Perhaps the leaders of the various liberal enclaves will finally pay attention to this monster hiding out in a sanctuary city and stop protecting them. An alleged kidnapper in the Los Zetas Mexican cartel was arrested in Chicago and extradited to Mexico, where he faces over 24 kidnapping charges and is linked to a horrifying massacre in the Mexican state of Coahuila. Coahuila State Police officers took custody of Juan Rafael El Cubano Arredondo Oviedo in the Mexican border city of Nuevo Laredo. U.S. law enforcement officials arrested Arredondo at an immigration court in Chicago, which is listed by the Center for Immigration Studies as an official sanctuary city. Immigrants flock to sanctuary cities for some pretty simple reasons, not the least of which is that the word is out that they will be protected at all costs from the feds. The liberal narrative suggests that they are all wonderful folks that just need a helping hand. That's a statistical impossibility. Here's further confirmation of that fact. Arredondo faces 28 kidnapping charges in Mexico, where authorities previously linked him to a chilling massacre in Coahuila in 2011, where over 300 people were kidnapped, killed, cut into pieces, and incinerated in ovens. The order was simple: kill anyone related, associated, or that in any way had contact with Villanueva or Garza Gaetan. Trump has clearly pointed out on a number of occasions that some bad dudes enter our country illegally. Arredondo falls into that category. Los Zetas began rounding up entire families, friends, distant relatives and innocent individuals who happened to have one of those last names, even if they were not related. Los Zetas would torture and execute the victims using a variety of cruel methods. The bodies were then taken to either a ranch near Allende or to the Coahuila State Prison in Piedras Negras to make the bodies disappear. Inside the jail, Los Zetas dismembered the bodies of the men, women, and children who had been kidnapped. The human parts were then placed in 55-gallon drums filled with diesel oil and then set on fire. After several hours, the majority of the human remains were all gone, leaving hundreds of families without answers. The ashes were then dumped in a local creek that leads to the Rio Grande. Does this mean that every immigrant is a criminal? Of course not, but it demonstrates how we simply don't know who is in our midst when people are not vetted properly. There are plenty of folks out there that have entered the country legally and gone on to build a happy life for themselves. That opportunity is still there for folks, provided they enter the country legally. Why is that too much to ask? Because it's a time-consuming process? Because the paperwork can be onerous? None of those are viable enough reasons to completely disregard our federal laws, which leads to far too many criminals slipping through the cracks. Trump wins, China gives North Korea worst news in their history. In what may be a major breakthrough in the diplomatic and political stalemate over North Korea if confirmed officially, Japan's Kyodo newspaper reported overnight that Chinese state banks have started suspending transactions through accounts held by North Koreans, making it nearly impossible to do business between the two countries. Furthermore, Kyodo News has confirmed that branch offices of at least 3 major state banks, the Bank of China, China Construction Bank and Agricultural Bank of China, in the northeastern border city of Yanji have also banned North Koreans from opening accounts. The Chinese banks have yet to freeze the accounts, meaning that North Koreans can still withdraw money from them, similar to bitcoins held in Chinese exchanges, but they are now prevented from making deposits or remittances, according to the sources quoted by Kyodo. This is being influenced by international sanctions against North Korea, an employee of one bank said. The bank restrictions, which the sources said from April were also starting to be put in force in Liaoning province, the main region of trade between China and North Korea, suggest that China may have become more serious about curbing its nuclear ambitions, something we hinted at last week, and it looks like North Korea is no longer playing to the Chinese script. The restrictions also appear to be intended to help major Chinese banks avoid being hit by sanctions imposed by the United States and other countries. In late June, the administration of U.S. President Donald Trump labeled a regional bank based in the northeastern border city of Dandong a foreign bank of primary money laundering concern, and unilaterally sanctioned another Chinese firm and 2 Chinese individuals for links to Pyongyang's arms development. China's reaction was understandably angry, which is why it is even more surprising that Beijing has volunteered to proceed with such a unilateral crackdown on its own. On Monday, the United States will seek to impose the toughest UN sanctions possible on North Korea in the wake of its 6th nuclear test a week ago, and calling on China to do more to rein in its defiant neighbor, although according to overnight reports by Reuters, the sanction proposed by the U.S. will be watered down to exclude oil trade with China and a freeze of Kim Jong-un's assets. More details here. China, which accounts for about 90% of North Korea's official trade and is its major oil supplier, has long opposed taking excessively strict measures against the country, out of fear of triggering a refugee crisis on the border. China's official data show that its exports to North Korea of petroleum products, including gasoline and light oil but excluding crude oil, fell 75% in 3 months through July from a year earlier to about 19,700 tons. One source said the main reason for the decline was that North Koreans were having difficulty paying for petroleum product imports because of the banking restrictions. As reported at the time, in North Korea gasoline prices shot up in April and remain high. North Korean officials told Kyodo News in July that economic activity was not in a state of confusion and prices were not rising continuously. But they said the government had encouraged North Koreans to use public transportation and bicycles to conserve fuel. If China is now aggressively pushing to cut off North Korea, it will accelerate the denouement. Either Kim will crack and submit to U.S. and Chinese parental supervision, or having nothing left to lose, he will proceed with more launches and nuclear tests in hopes that the final provocation drags him and his country down in flames. Watch Sarah Huckabee drops Comey crime bombshell on live TV. Ousting former FBI Director James Comey may not have been the best move, from a political standpoint, but it was the best move, from a justice perspective. In the latest White House press briefing, Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders accused fired FBI Director James Comey of providing false testimony to Congress. When asked by a reporter if it was a wise political decision to fire James Comey, Sarah Huckabee said it was, and explained that Comey was fired for a number of reasons, including giving false testimony, leaking privileged information to journalists. He went outside of the chain of command and politicized an investigation into a presidential candidate. Former FBI Director James Comey was fired by President Trump on May 9, 2017. There are plenty of reasons to justify the ousting of the FBI Director, who only served 4 years of his 10-year term. A series of memos written by President Trump, Attorney General Jeff Sessions, and Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein circulated around the White House in the lead-up to Comey's dismissal. The memos outlined the administration's reasoning for Comey's firing, and highlighted ways in which the FBI's reputation suffered under the former director. President Trump released a memo informing James Comey that he had been terminated and removed from office, effective immediately. In the memo, he also highlighted his reasons for ousting Comey, and referred to memos written by Sessions and Rosenstein for further justification. President Trump was upset with Comey because the FBI director refused to admit publicly that Trump was not under investigation for Russian collusion. "While I greatly appreciate you informing me, On 3 separate occasions, that I am not under investigation, Trump wrote, chastising Comey. However, the final decision to fire Comey was based on Comey's botched treatment of the Hillary Clinton email investigation. Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein explained that Comey broke long-standing Justice Department rules when he personally decided not to press charges against Clinton. James Comey, he said, announced his own conclusions about the nation's most sensitive criminal investigation, without the authorization of duly appointed Justice Department leaders. As noted by Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee, evidence has emerged that reinforces Comey's firing. Huckabee specifically mentions false testimony, and the leaking information to the press. Just before the 2016 presidential election, FBI Director Comey was dragged before the House Judiciary Committee to answer questions about the atypical Clinton email investigation. Representative John Ratcliffe, RTX, asked Comey if he made the decision to not press charges on Clinton before or after he interviewed her. After, Comey replied with confidence. However, Senators Lindsey Graham, RSC, and Chuck Grassley, REA, recently uncovered evidence that suggests James Comey was circulating a draft of his decision not to press charges before he interviewed 17 key witnesses, including Hillary Clinton herself, Fox News reports. Finally, immediately after he was fired, James Comey leaked a document that he drafted as FBI director, wherein he suggested that President Trump was obstructing the investigation into former Advisor General Michael Flynn. However, the document was written by Comey while he was on official business, making it the property of the federal government. James Comey violated the law when he stole government documents upon his firing. He only compounded the error when he leaked the same documents to the press. It's happening. North Korea just received the worst news yet. A unanimous vote happened within the United Nations Security Council that tasked for sanctions on North Korea, ever since the republic carried out several missile tests, the first one being 6 months ago. These punishments were also proposed by U.S. Ambassador to the UN Nikki Haley. Today, we are attempting to take the future of the North Korean nuclear program out of the hands of its outlaw regime, Haley said. We are done trying to prod the regime to do the right thing. We are now acting to stop it from having the ability to do the wrong thing, Haley added. All sanctions provide severe action, which was downsized a bit after Russia and China warned to introduce a veto to the decision. It is a very significant set of additional sanctions on imports into North Korea and on exports out of North Korea and other measures as well, said Matthew Rycroft, the United Kingdom's ambassador to the UN. The sanctions include a ban on North Korea's largest trade operations including textile and oil exports, which, if stopped, would impair North Korea's economy for good. The UN Security Council unanimously adopted the strongest sanctions ever against North Korea, number 15-0, Haley tweeted, including a breakdown of how severe the sanctions are against North Korea. Initially, the idea was to put a lockdown on North Korea's oil ventures and to block every of Kim Jong-un's personal assets. However, countries such as China and Russia obstructed these bans, asking that all sanctions are reduced. Just last week, Russian leader Vladimir Putin explained how punishing North Korea in a ban-inspired manner would not bring closure to their aggression or the overall issue for that matter. We do not need to react emotionally and corner North Korea into a dead end, Putin said. I am concerned cutting off the oil supply to North Korea may cause damage to people in hospitals or other ordinary citizens. As a response to that, President Trump noted that any country collaborating with North Korea business-wise will become persona non grata as well, which would result in blocking that country's export-import connections, too. He indirectly referred to China and Russia, which cannot seem to learn priorities, nor the need for a compromise.